some news broke on Sunday morning. Catarina Macario, Champions League winner with Lyon, U.S. women's national team forward, midfielder. She can do it all. She announced on social media that she has torn her ACL. It actually happened in last Wednesday's match with Lyon. It was the season finale versus Issy. It was 13 minutes into the match. Cat goes down. Lyon ends up winning 4-0. But it was a pretty tough injury to watch in a game that didn't necessarily mean anything to Lyon. They had already won the Champions League. They had already won the league. Cat finished the season as Lyon's top goal scorer, 23 goals in 35 matches across all competitions. But this injury, devastating to see. Her announcement. Macario put out a statement on social media saying that, quote, unfortunately, injuries are a natural part of football. Tearing an ACL is never easy. And although I am devastated to be away from the field and my teammates for a few months, I could not be more proud of my first year as a professional footballer and to have helped the team reconquer 2 big titles this season. Then Lyon did put out a statement that she's going to need surgery and she's expected to be sidelined for 6 months. Devastating news to hear about the 22-year-old, the rising star, honestly, already risen star with the national team, has done so much. When you heard this news yesterday, Lori, what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, completely bummed, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a player that you can tell like loves the game, loves playing, and to what she said, has had an incredible year, and continues to progress not only with Lyon, played a significant role with them winning Champions League, but also I think really has started to come into more than started coming into her own. Really has proven to be the future and the now of the U.S. women's national team. And, so in a little bit of a different way than we saw last year, because I think last year leading into the Olympics, we wanted more. It was almost like Kat was still trying to find her way with the national team. And then starting this year, like really took the number 9 position and the way that she wants to play it in her own hands and has led this team. So disappointment on an individual level for Kat, because you're bummed just with the injury in general. And then really unfortunate for the U.S. women's national team.
Yeah.
I think the tough thing is, though, is like when you start to see the women's game as a whole, with the amount of minutes these players are playing and the competitiveness of the games, this is the reality going forward, is we're going to see more, not necessarily ACLs, hopefully not, but like you're going to see injuries, right? Because these games are tough. The NWSL, we've seen the schedule that has already been put out. We've seen significant injuries to some really important players already. Tierna Davidson, Sam Mewis, Lynn Williams, right? Like all of these players. So this is the unfortunate reality, I think, going forward. But also, on a positive note, makes an interesting discussion in conjunction to this discussion we've already been having for months now about like the depth up top and then now what does that look like?
Completely. I mean, as you mentioned, so many injuries across soccer, women's soccer right now, and with the U.S. women's national team about injuries. You gave a shout out to Tierna Davidson recovering from an ACL right now. Lynn Williams out for the season as well, but Lynn Williams was also part of that front line for Vlatko Andonovski. And now without Kat as well in there, who is such a versatile player, she could play that number 9. She could drop into the midfield when the U.S. is lacking depth in the midfield. How does this change the front line for the U.S. knowing that Kat Macario is out for the summer and World Cup qualifiers?
Well, listen, I do think it changes the way the U.S. plays, because we don't have another player like Kat Macario, who's the way that she plays the number 9, right? Which is being able to drop back and almost play a 10 that allows like a Sanchez or Rose to get in behind. I think the way that Kat plays also, allows somebody like a Mal Pugh and Sophia Smith a little bit of a different way that they can play, right? In terms of cutting in and combining or drifting wide. I think the way that Macario really played that position, we started to see an evolution of how the U.S. can attack that we hadn't seen in a while. Because to the point that we were making earlier, I think if you put in somebody like an Alex Morgan, who's a true number 9, even Ashley Hatch, those two players play very differently than Kat does. And so then there's adjustments that are made around the field. However, I still think you're looking at a front line that consists surely of a Mal Pugh and Sophia Smith, right? And you can even interchange Trinity Rodman in there as she continues to get more time, I think, with the U.S. Women's National Team. But yeah, I think the question mark is then who's playing that number 9 and what does that look like around her? And that's when I think you're looking at least in my group of players, an Alex Morgan or an Ashley Hatch. You know, I really do. And at this point in time, I might not have had Ashley Hatch, and we spoke about this a couple weeks ago, as like the top of like number 1, but now she does, because these types of things change the whole perspective of the way that you're looking to play and who potentially is going to be on the field. So, I might put a Hatch up there as a true number 9, who has the ability to check back and link up. And she also has the understanding of playing with Sanchez and Trinity. And when you're talking about a young team that needs to build continuity, that's really important.
That is huge to have that familiarity from players. And then the transition is so much smoother. There's only 2 friendlies in June before the World Cup Qualifiers, Concacaf W Championship. So Kat is out for those. Lyon put out in their statement 6 months. ACL is typically 6 to 8, 9. We just saw Nadia Nadim, the Danish international, come back after 233 days with her ACL playing in competition. But pretty quick turnaround that is hopeful for Catarina Macario. Looking ahead to the Women's World Cup in July of 2023, she could be back for that, right? Timeline wise?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think we saw, Ellie Carpenter is another one, the right back for Lyon, just tear her ACL in the Champions League final. So, yeah, certainly. I think it's crunch time, especially not only just thinking about the repairing of the knee and the healing of that, but the confidence that you're okay and that you can perform at a level that you're used to performing as a player on the field. Like there's an emotional, mental aspect that I don't think is talked about a ton when you're coming back from injury. That would be a process in all of this as well. So that's something to look at. But at the same time, doable. I mean, we're, as you mentioned, Nadia Nadim, right? And the goal for her is to get back for the Euros with Denmark. And so, yeah.
Yeah, there's so many.
It's so individual, right?
It is so individual. Luckily, Catarina's only 22 years old. So the recovery on a 22-year-old body is hopefully a little bit smoother, easier, faster than, say, a 32-year-old body. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. It's not just making sure her knee is stable after an ACL injury, because I'm sure there's a little bit of other cleanup that the doctors are going to do while they're in there. So making sure the knee is stable, that she gets her strength back, but then endurance, making sure fitness is back at its top level, touch coming back, which I doubt it'll go too far in a player like Catarina Macario, but that's also another factor in this, making sure that the level of play and the level of technical ability is still there, and it'll be different. And her getting to know her new knee and her new body, it's a bit of an adjustment period to come back from an intensive injury like an ACL tear. And then on top of that, coming back in and having the confidence mentally to be able to go hard into tackles again. I mean, I've had a handful of knee surgeries, and that's always a scary thing when the first time you're back in training and you're not non-contact and you can make a tackle. How do you go in? You're thinking about it versus 6 months, 8 months before that, you weren't thinking about that. You're just going in hard to make the tackle. So it's so much physical, but a lot of it is mental and emotional coming back from an injury.